Now we are going to study how a plant dies, like what is the process behind its death. That we have to see. Plant is basically an organism. It has a definite lifespan. That lifespan comes to an end by the process of senescence, which ultimately leads to death of the particular organism. So is in the case of plants, that they have three phases of their life. First one being their juvenile phase, when they are developing or attaining the reproductive maturity. When that maturity is attained, they become reproductively viable. That means they are able to reproduce by the process of both sexual and asexual reproduction. And when that maturity is completed, the period of complete maturity to the period of death, that particular duration is known as senescence. And as you know, there must be some metabolic process, some basic physiological process behind a particular process which is occurring and visible in front of us, known as senescence. There are certain things which can be clearly observed, how the plant is deteriorating itself towards the death. So that particular process is known as senescence. We are going to deal with that, and we take into account another process in the plant life, that is the process of abscission. You might have seen in the autumn season, there are leaves which are falling, there are lots of leaves which have fell from trees, and trees are in the state of denudation. That particular falling of an old organ or particular part of the plant which is being shed by the plant, that is known as abscission. So let's take into account senescence for first. Senescence, as I told you, it is the period between complete maturity of the plant. That means it is able to reproduce. That is the period between complete maturity and the final death. Now that final death could be for the particular organ. It could be organ death, or it could be a complete organism death, that is complete plant death. You might have observed that plants do show senescence in leaves. There are older leaves, yellow leaves present along with the newly formed leaves which are quite green in color. So we do observe organ death as well as complete plant death, that is seen in the plants. And what happens during that period is that the plant has to reach from its best period of maturity to death period. So basically it has to undergo the process of deterioration, and that deterioration is not that it's not something like that it is getting deteriorated in a span of 1 day or 2 days. It would take some time. That would be a slow process. It would be a gradual deterioration which would ultimately lead to accumulation of waste metabolic materials. Now, as I say that there would be waste metabolic materials, then you have to think on one thing, that metabolism will not stop. Metabolism is taking place. And what is the reason that there is accumulation of waste metabolic material in a greater quantity? Because the rate of catabolism has increased. So whenever there is higher rate of catabolism, there would be a metabolic waste, and because the plant is in the stage of senescence, that deterioration would not be in sync with utilizing the waste material or getting rid of the waste material by the plant. It won't be in sync. So there would be a lot of accumulation of the waste metabolic materials inside the plant itself, and there would be decrease in dry weight. So whenever a plant is showing these symptoms, basically it is in the period of senescence. And you would be surprised to know that mostly the plants, those which are annual plants, not the annual plants, the perennial plants. So we come across two new terms which I just said, annual and perennial. We know that plants have lifespan. On the basis of their lifespan, we divide them into three categories. First one is annuals. We have discussed it earlier as well. Annuals, biennials and perennials. So when I use these terms, one thing is clear, that annual plant will complete its reproductive phase and the vegetative phase within a year. Biennial would take 2 years, and a perennial. Perennial is an English word which means that something is going to stay forever, sort of thing. So perennial plants are those plants which would take 2-3 years for their vegetative growth, and after that they will have reproductive phases every year. So such are the perennial plants. Try to recall, I gave you an example of mango tree. Like you harvest its fruits every year after it has attained the vegetative growth. So the perennial plants are not going to show senescence until and unless it's like a period of 60 years or 70 years, or it could be greater. So we see organ death over here. So the organ death would also see such process, like supposedly a leaf has to die in the plant, or some branch has to die, it has to undergo senescence. So all these processes would be taking part in that particular plant part, not in the entire plant. Alright, if on the contrary, if we compare it with the humans, once the senescence starts, when the reproductive phase is over, the senescence comes into scene, the senescence starts and the entire body starts deteriorating, leading to the death. But in case of plants, we oftenly see organ death. That I would give an example, that is alfalfa, which is not quite common. You must be knowing dahlia flowers. You would see that even if they are dead after one season, they have their roots intact in the soil. So basically that root part is still living, it hasn't undergone senescence. It is the upper part, that is above the root, that undergoes the senescence process. It dies, and in the next season, next flowering season, you would see the plant all over again. So in that case, we see organ death. Okay, that the organ has undergone senescence. The rest of the organs, they are intact, they have not undergone senescence. In the case of whole plant, as in the case of beans and cereals, you must have seen that cropping seasons, we have wheat, we have rice. The plant dies after giving the required cereals, whichever we take them, because they show whole plant senescence. The entire plant would die. Once the field has been harvested, you will not see more rice plants coming in the next year. So basically the plant has undergone senescence completely. That is the whole plant senescence. Now when I am saying time and again about organ senescence, what thing comes into mind is the shedding of leaves. Basically the dead leaves falling down, they are old leaves, they are dead, basically they fall down the plant. So what is the process behind that falling of leaf? That is known as abscission. Alright, now abscission, what is the cause of abscission? There is a hormone known as abscisic acid. Name is also such because it is related with abscission. So the hormone's name is these are not to be confused with hormones, they are chemicals only, not the hormones as in the case of humans and animals. There is hormonal balance change. That means abscisic acid comes into scene. Abscisic acid, ABA stands for abscisic acid. Its name has been derived for its important and major role in the process of abscission. What takes place in such reaction is that a senescence layer is being formed. Alright, the hormone comes into the scene, it develops a senescence layer in the organ. Supposedly, I have this leaf, consider it this leaf, and it is joined to the branch by this stalk. I hope your morphological knowledge is quite brushed up, that this stalk is known as pedicel. Now this leaf has to fall, its entire mineral content has been used up, or whatever could be mobilized has been mobilized, and what cannot be, that is remaining, chlorophyll has been degenerated. So this leaf is about to fall. What would happen? This is the point of joining with the branch. Over here a senescence layer would come and develop. Now when I say senescence layer, a layer of separation basically would develop. Now in that layer of separation there would be enzymes which would be polysaccharide hydrolyzing. Hydrolyzing means dissolving, and when I say polysaccharide, you must be knowing in plant tissue basic structure, whenever I draw two plant cells, there is a layer known as middle lamella. That middle lamella layer is made up of pectin and cellulose. You must be knowing that middle lamella layer has to be dissolved. Okay, so we have digestion of middle lamella which is taking place, and the separation layer is being formed, that is abscission layer. As soon as the middle lamella gets digested, this particular plant would be shed off. Whenever there is rainfall or a strong gale comes into scene, this leaf, particular organ, it could be a fruit as well. You see the ripened up fruits, they fall down because that stalk basically is not able to take up the weight, because it has been separated by the abscission layer, because the middle lamella layer, which was reason for cementing of the cells, has been digested by hydrolyzing enzymes which are often pectinase. I am writing it over here so that you remember it, because this is something to be learnt. Pectinase and cellulase. They digest the polysaccharides present in the middle lamella, and it leads to the softening of the region. Okay, whichever region has developed this layer, it would get softened up because that cementing part is gone, and whenever some rain or wind comes, strong wind comes, they would fall down. Now one thing we need to understand is the role of abscisic acid. What is the role of abscisic acid? Abscisic acid would guide the enzymes, the digesting enzymes, to go at that particular place where this layer has to be formed. So basically this is also a physicochemical formation. So it would require a guided mechanism which would be controlled by abscisic acid. Abscisic acid, if it is present at that particular site, it would lead to the steps which we have just studied, which result in abscission. So we get to know that how senescence takes place and how that particular senescent part which has been dead, how the plant gets rid of that particular plant by the process of abscission. Thank you.